Hi, I'm Sil. I'm working on a D&D tabletop product called the Arena Battle League. And even though the final product is a book, I'm using Unreal Engine to do all of the artwork for it. This allows me to make dramatic videos for each picture in the book that DMs can share with their players at the table. In this YouTube series, we'll show you the progress we make as we push toward launch. Welcome to Sil Creates. This week was a bit of a challenging one. Chris was sick all last week, and I had a project due at work that was a surprise project I wasn't expecting. So we didn't have a lot of free time this week to work on our ABL stuff. Here Chris was working away on martial law judge character. You can see him here talking with me in Trello as he's working through the stats. This week we were really struggling with the size of the stat blocks, especially in the preliminary stage. The characters are at a tier 1 level in the preliminary stage, and we didn't really have a lot of room for very large stat blocks in that preliminary stage. And so I spent quite a bit of time attempting to find a layout that could afford a larger stat block for the preliminary stage version of each of the characters, but as you saw there, I couldn't really get them to fit. In order to maintain the page count, the limit of 20 pages per team, we really don't have a lot of choice. We just have to make the stat blocks small enough that we can still have good representation art-wise and yet still have interesting characters. Chris and I went back and forth quite a lot trying to work that out. And as you saw from the section title of this part of the video, we removed the tactics from the stat block. And I'm not certain that I've talked about the tactics before, but tactics were a way for us to help DMs at the table to know what the team members of the opposing teams are going to be doing. It's just sort of an easy way to describe power combinations that we're designing for them. We want these teams to feel like actual parties where they're collaborating and cooperating with their powers, really to make the combat much more interesting for the players. And we had been putting them in the creature stat blocks, but that was taking up a lot of room, so here we decided to move them out into the team pages, and that required a redesign of the team pages. We previously had allocated 2 pages in the book to describe general information about the team. We've now increased that to 4, which gives us a lot more room to do things like tactics. And here you can see me experimenting with the layout and the format of how we can represent this information. At first I thought we could do it with tables. Chris had the idea that perhaps just prose would be best. So I mocked up a number of options. I had 4 different mock-ups. in the end we went with the prose version. I created a nice layout here, you can see, with some offset rows. I liked it in the end. Paying the bills is a bit of a nod and wink at the fact that the ABL, being a tournament event, has opportunity for us to really poke fun at esports and sports by doing parodies of sponsors for each of these teams. Give it that sport-like feel. And of course, they're not real sponsors, but hopefully people will get a laugh out of that. We spent some time considering what it would take to do a successful launch of our product, a crowdfunding launch. Originally, I had thought that we would need all of the 16 teams from the season 1 of the Arena Battle League complete for our launch. We realized that to play through the tournament, we really only need to provide 4 different teams that the players can play against. One for each stage of the tournament: preliminaries, quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals. And providing 4 versions of each character of each of those 4 teams, one at each of those stages, allows quite a lot of replayability. We'll have 64 different stat blocks, which is basically 64 monsters in the first version. And so here I was resizing the sections of the progress puzzle to account for the fact that the teams no longer take up the vast majority of the work that we have to do. And then I had to reallocate some puzzle pieces here to adjust for the new status. And I also figured there is a little more work to do in some of the core rules, so I took a few puzzle pieces out from there. But we did make a lot of progress on the teams as well, so I'm adding some puzzle pieces back in for that now. And here we have a much more balanced looking puzzle. I'm happy with that. And we've cut significant time off the production, which is great. If watching the Unreal Engine crashes was difficult, well, DaVinci Resolve has learned a thing or two from Epic Games, it seems. Suddenly, I was not able to save the project. And I got into an infinite loop of error dialogues. It didn't allow me to exit the app. I was pretty worried I might have lost a lot of work here. I had to force quit the application using Task Manager. Fortunately, when I reopened it, all of my changes had been saved, so I didn't lose any work. What do you do when technology gets you down? Make yourself a cup of tea. Listen to some music. Do a little dancing when nobody can see you, without realizing you've left the camera on the whole time. Chair dancing. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next episode of Sil Creates.